Okay, so welcome to all the Around the Ground subscribers and viewers. I have a very big pleasure to announce and to reveal that we have the VFL and AFL legend, Mr. Robert DiPierdomenico. From Hawthorn, of course. Played over 240 games, is a Brownlow medalist, and has won 5 premierships, and numerous night premierships as well. It's a great pleasure to meet you, and thanks for being part of our show today. Thank you for your time and to be part of this interview.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you spelt my name right.
I've been practicing a lot, yeah, before I came. Yeah, I went over quite a few. Now, can I call you Dipper?
You can call me Dipper.
Okay, great, thank you. Phew, that's good, it's a relief. Now, you grew up in Hawthorn, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, in the Kew area?
In the Kew area. I grew up in Hawthorn. My father came to this country in 1954, and my mother came to this country in 1956. And when Dad first arrived, he rented a house in Richmond, and then when Mum arrived, he bought a house in Hawthorn. And lucky enough for me, that was the place where...
And you were there forever?
I was there forever, yeah. So I was zoned to that area. These days you're drafted to a football club, but I was zoned, and
yeah. Now, did you go to school in Hawthorn as well, a state school?
Yeah, I went to Hawthorn West, up there. I went to Swinburne Tech in Hawthorn. I went to Kew High down the road. I played my first football game sort of round about in Hawthorn at East Hawthorn Football Club. And then I went to North Kew and Kew. So I've always been around the local area.
I was told that your head master, teacher, was John Kennedy.
At one stage he was. That's when I first started going to Hawthorn as well. I used to get the strap during the day. I used to get the laps at night.
What did you get the straps in?
I used to get the strap during the day, and then I used to get the laps at night from John Kennedy.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's a funny thing because I was looking at that particular time when he was the coach of Hawthorn, and and then one day you're going to be playing for Hawthorn. I just thought that was curious. Whether there was some influence even then for you to.
No. I was lucky enough to be able to be seen in the area as a young boy, as a young football player, and then I was invited down to Hawthorn in 1975. And that's when, John Kennedy was my principal in 1974, 75. And then I left Swinburne, went to Kew High, and then that's where I first started playing Hawthorn.
Okay. So I was just wondering then, if your father, has strong Italian heritage, I'm surprised that football was your pathway and not soccer, for example.
I understand what you're saying there. My father didn't really understand the game, of course, but there was a soccer influence from all the migrants who came here to Australia. Because back in the day, they used to play a lot of soccer games at Olympic Park, and I remember going with my father to go watch Juventus play whoever. But the game took me on, and I was lucky enough to be playing AFL football. My father and mother, they were very hard workers, like all parents. They were factory workers, and they didn't really see a lot of me because I was either get picked up by people who take me to training for football and so. But I was fortunate enough to make a career of the game. And my parents were very proud of it. But at the time, I didn't realise that I was actually paving the way for a lot of the Italian community. make them feel stronger and better within our community here.
Wow, good for you, yeah. So when you were recruited to play for Hawthorn, what was the feeling like? Do you remember, you're playing for VFL, what was that like?
Well, basically, my father had no idea about, he got a knock on the door one day, and there's three gentlemen who were from the Hawthorn Football Club, and asked if they'd be interested in Robert being part of the Hawthorn Football Club. And my dad had a few wines with them and got a contract out of them, and he virtually sold me. He made money on me. But I was lucky enough to go to Hawthorn in 1975, and who was to know that I was going to be there for 19 years of my life? Every day I was there, every day. So at the same time, players like Ian Payton, Rodney Eve, who of course everyone knows Rodney, we were there on the same time, the same day, and we're all great friends. And from that moment when I walked in, as a young boy, you just didn't realise what was going to happen.
And was that Glenferrie?
There's Glenferrie Oval, yeah. And then you see John Kennedy, Peter Crimmins, Michael Tucker, Don Scott, Peter Knights, all these great names, and you're thinking, wow,
Wow.
Yeah. I used to be a Collingwood supporter. Yeah,
okay, right.
And Peter McKenna and Wayne Richardson were my heroes growing up, but now I don't like them at all.
Yeah, good. That's I don't like them either. So yeah, we've got one thing in common. Yeah, wow. So that must have been an amazing experience that you're walking into, this facility at Glenferrie, and it must have made. Did they make you feel comfortable when you went there?
Well, as a young boy, you just don't know what. I mean, I'm 16 years of age, and all these great names that I've seen before, and once you hear John Kennedy speak, like his voice is so powerful and so strong and so demanding that you're shaking your boots. Even today, at 86 years of age, you're still shaking your boots. But it was a great time. It was a great time to start.
He's got it's almost like a general or something.
Oh yeah, very, very strong. Very strong. When he looks at you and speaks and he demands something, all you want to do is give it. That's why the club was so successful. He was really the backbone of the club. Because in the past,
I can understand why.
Yeah, in the past, Hawthorn were cellar dwellers. We were down here a lot of times, and John Kennedy had enough and said it's time for this club to grow up.
Yeah, I can remember that time really well actually.
From 1961 right through, and then and then that's why John Kennedy is held in such regard to all of us.
Wow. Yeah, I still remember that as a boy when in 1961 it was such a turning point, and then 1971 again. There was another important time in their history.
Well, through the 70s,
and John Kennedy was really
pivotal. From virtually 1971 right through to when I retired in 91, it was just we played finals every year. We were a strong club. We were powerful. We didn't have a lot of supporters. We were more of a head down type of club, but you knew the structure and you knew the culture of the club, which is really important. And everyone knows the culture of Hawthorn. See, me being in the public eye now and corporate, everyone knows where I come from, and you command respect. Not that you want respect, but you command it because people know, he's from Hawthorn Football Club. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Really interesting how you say that. So when you were your first 5 years, you were playing. You played 99 games until you made the opportunity. you get into the senior rank?
No, it goes like this. As a young boy, I had difficulties. I had a very bad stutter. Like I used to speak like this, and now I make a living out of speaking because of what sport and culture has been able to give me. But I've worked hard on it. But in the early day, when I first went there was under-19s football, remember that? There was reserves football, and there was seniors football. So I played under-19s first, and then I played about 6 games there, and then I played about 4 or 5 little reserves and got my first game in 1975, in my first year, against Fitzroy at Junction Oval. The great Lee Matthews was injured that day, and I replaced him. How good's that? And I was the front page of The Age. I remember Mike Sheen wrote a big story about the alphabet is about to play for Hawthorn. But from there, I had 2 years of learning the product, but also I was a bit of a naughty boy. I was sort of, a bit of a naughty boy.
In what way?
I used to have more fun than train, and I said, because back in those days it wasn't professional like it is today. And as a young boy growing up, I got 16, I got my licence at 18, started drinking, had a bit of fun, playing a bit of footy, but then from around about 1978, I was committed, and then basically I played a premiership in 78 and got best on ground that day. And that was my first taste to what it was like to win a premiership at age 18, 19.
Wow. And then after that, you were still determined to really just make a difference in the way you play?
Well, I had an opportunity, but you just don't know what opportunities, how long the opportunities are going to be there for. I mean, I wasn't the best player. I was very hyperactive, which gave me an opportunity to, just to do what I needed to do. I had a lot of energy to do things. I was a good talker. I was known for having my head over the ball. And then as I kept going, I got more skill and become one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah, well, I can understand, yeah. It's a really fascinating story, yeah. So the team that you played with, they won 5 premierships. They were a dynasty in many ways. Was it a good recruiting officer that made the difference, or how would you explain?
We at the club from 1975 through to 1991. I virtually played finals every year. It was an amazing time. But at the time we were building something.
Yeah.
And there was great recruiting coming through. We had some great players from interstate like Johnny Platt and Gary Buckenara and Jason Dunstall and these great players. And then you had locals like Dermot and Gary Ayres and myself and Chris Langford. I mean, all the names. And they were just very strong, popular names. So we formed a great basis. But at the time, we just did what we had to do. We trained hard, we played hard on and off the field. And sometimes we believe that off the field is such as important as on the field because you get to know the personalities. Not everybody's your best friend, but you respect people's positions. And on the field, you hear their voice and you know they're there for you. You do everything possible to do everything for them as well. We played 7 grand finals in a row, which was amazing. Unfortunately, we lost a couple against Essendon.
That's rarely ever happened, I think, even in the history of the AFL, isn't
it? We've had sides now play up to 4.
Fortunate.
The local boys now won 3 in a row just 2 or 3 years ago. And it's, when it was a great time. The 80s were fun times. There was the music, the disco ball, the community grounds, Collingwood, Richmond, Carlton, Fitzroy, Essendon, and used to go to suburban grounds, Professionalism came in around about 1983, 84, when dietitians, grounds were sort of being joined up, the grounds were getting better, and players were starting to make a little bit more money.
And it's become much more professional.
Well, now it's amazing,
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely. Okay, now when you won the Brownlow medal, were you surprised?
Very much surprised. Because
why is that? Because you considered yourself to be a dirty player?
I wasn't a dirty player. Hey, get that out. I was a strong player.
Can I ask you, was he a dirty player?
No.
Fair enough, good support. Are you relieved? Yeah.
No, I played the game hard. Both ways. I shared the message. The medal was shared between Greg Williams and myself, who was a very hard, tough player himself, and it showed that people with a bit of headstrong tackling sometimes can also be very, very good players and win this great medal. And I'm very proud to be Hawthorn's first ever Brownlow medalist. Yeah.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, we had Lee Matthews, Peter Knight, Dunstall, Dermott, everyone but me won it. I mean, it was a big surprise. I remember my coach Alan Jeans, who was like a father figure to us all. I remember the night that I won the Brownlow, and then the next day I came to Glenferrie Oval. There was 10,000 people to watch us train because we were going to play in the grand final in 1986.
And that was the last training of the year, right?
That was the last training. There were about 10,000 people there. And he said, now, congratulations, you're Hawthorn's first ever Brownlow medalist, and now you have responsibilities of being a Brownlow medalist. And at the time I didn't really know what that meant, but I do understand now. It was always about culture. It was always about making sure that you understand who you are and what a difference you can make to people. As a sport's made a difference for me.
He's clearly had an amazing influence on you, Alan Jeans, hasn't he?
Well, the football club has, but also Alan Jeans, because he was the first coach from outside Hawthorn to come and coach. John Kennedy asked him. And the only other coach is Alistair Clarkson. So the only two coaches outside Hawthorn has been Jeans and Alistair Clarkson. Every other coach has been a Hawthorn person.
I didn't realise that. I had no idea.
Yeah. So when Jeans came, he was a sergeant of police at the time, and he set some standard rules. I had to pull my head in a few times, but I always gave him. I always pushed the line for him. Always, always teased him. And we had a relationship that was like a father and son. We argue, we hug, we cry, we punch each other up, but we for the same cause. And that was the best thing about Alan Jeans, that he knew how to handle people. unfortunately, these days you can't handle everyone with the same stick. You've got to know their personalities and how to handle their personalities, and that's how you get the best out of people.
Interesting. So did you play with Peter Hudson?
I played with Peter Hudson for about 5 games, 1975. Peter's a very good friend of mine, but you know, what a great player he was for the club. But my full forward was Moncrief, Dunstall, of course, Dermot, of course, Lee Matthews. So, you know, I had the privilege of playing against with these great players.
Fantastic. And David Parkin?
David Parkin was a big influence on my life as well. I played my first grand final under David in 1975. And now, 1978, my apologies. But from 1975 to 78, he was my reserves coach. And then became my senior coach. And even today...
That was Parkin, you're referring to David Parkin?
Yeah, David Parkin, yeah.
So he was the reserves coach from 75 to 78.
Yeah.
And then he was the
senior coach from 1978 onwards. Yeah. Until Alan Jeans came. And even today, David Parkin and I are closer than ever. He's now 70 odd and I'm 60. But when you're 16 and he's, 25, it's a bit long, but now we're really close, And I do a lot of work with David and help him where I can, yeah.
Yeah, great. So are you disappointed when David Parkin left the club? What was that?
Well, back in those days, it was very unusual for, people in a football club to move to other clubs. But David was renowned as a different type of coach, and he was going to be, he went to Carlton, of course, and became successful there. Went to Fitzroy, of course, but the business was moving along, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It was changing. Yeah, for sure. So when Alan Jeans, there was a time when he wasn't well, and I can remember it was Alan Joyce who then replaced him for a while.
Yeah. So
I think he won 1 or 2 premierships at the time.
Alan Joyce was the football manager at the time, and when Alan Jeans became sick, the club went to Alan Joyce because 1, being a Hawthorn person, 2, he had coached before. This is in 1988. Alan Jeans had a brain hemorrhage that year. And then Alan Joyce took over. It was good for us in a way because it was a new voice, but same culture, and we respected him. But he was different to Alan. Some boys liked it, some boys didn't.
Yeah, everyone's different, I suppose, aren't they?
Some boys liked it, some boys didn't. But what we did do, I think we lost 2 games that year and won the premiership by 96 points. You could have coached us.
Now, can you tell me about the grand final against Geelong? Okay.
What do you want to know?
It's one of the most fiercest matches, and I can recall there was a moment where Hughes and Bruns were in the headlock.
Grand finals is very hard. To get into grand finals is very, very hard. For us, it was our 7th day grand final in a row. But you're there to win, you're not there to lose. So in 1978, when I played my first grand final, we won. In 1983, I played my next grand final, we won. Then we played 84 and 85, we lost to Essendon. Then we played 86 and we lost, and we won against Carlton. Then we played 87, we lost to Carlton. Then we played 88, we won against Melbourne. So the 1989 grand final was very important for us as a club and as a footballer, because no Hawthorn side ever won back-to-back before. It's the hardest thing to do, as you probably noticed this year, you know. But we were determined that we had to win this game, and it's become one of the great games of the history of the game, because of both sides, because of the game, the way it was played, the injuries, the players that put themselves, their body on the line all the time. That's what you do, because you play grand finals to win, and you do anything possible to do what you need to do. You don't come off the ground saying, maybe I could have, should have done it. No. You give it all.
Yeah. Yeah, everything.
So that game was given all. I mean, Dermot, my teammate, got hit in the first bounce of the ball. But he got up, and with an arrogance that Dermot had, went back and bleeding and all that sort of stuff, and kicked the goal, and it was amazing. Gary Ablett Senior kicked 9 goals straight that day. I ended up in hospital with a punch and lung after the game. We had other players who were, you know, had been knocked out, torn thighs, knees, but everyone just wanted to be on that ground to make sure that we won that game.
Yeah, amazing.
I was in hospital for 9 days. The first 5 days, no one could see me or speak to me.
And so, first 5 days?
First 5 days. But on the 7th day when I rose, yeah, 2 people have done it. But would I do it again? Yes, I would. Yes. The good news is we won. That's what all counts. And was part of Hawthorn's first ever back-to-back.
Fantastic. Yeah. Did you miss being part of the celebrations after that grand finals?
I didn't know much about the game because I ended up in hospital about 5 minutes after the game.
So you were in too much pain? And
well, I was in trouble. I was in trouble. I had a priest in the at the hospital who was holding my hand.
Really?
Yeah. And then
well, they thought you were...
Well, just speaking to me, making sure I was okay, because with the punch and lung, I had no voice. I was talking like this, really high. And I had nothing left in me. And then a nurse came in and cut my jumper up and got like a knitting needle and went bang into my chest. Yeah. And she saved my life because I had
The nurse did? The nurse did that?
Yeah, because they weren't quite sure what was happening with me, except they ended up finding out I had a punch and lung, and that saved my life, yeah.
Now, after your football career, Dipper, you then went to the media as the famous and possibly the inaugural boundary rider for Channel 7. How was that experience?
At the time, it was something new for everybody. There was no training, no nothing. They gave me a microphone and off you go. And as I said to you before, I used to have a very bad stutter. And when I get myself in a bit of heat, whenever I tend to stutter, I remember the first couple of times it was a nightmare. But I did it for 12 years and have become very popular. Yeah, so really loved it. Even today, I know all the players, I know their families, who they are. I've been in game development now for nearly 20 odd years through ice kick and all the bits and pieces that we do with football. So I'm still very close to the game and very fortunate that I've been involved with the growing of the game. But having played in the media and do what I do, I've been everywhere in Australia. And there's a football kick somewhere, everywhere in Australia. You know, in Indigenous communities, it's amazing to see these young children who just love football. That's their Bible. They just love it. And it's important for us to keep moving because we want to make sure that the game is available for everybody.
And so are you still involved in Hawthorn Footy Club in any capacity now?
No. Just an onlooker as an ex-player, but I try and help the club where I can. But I come across a lot of clubs. I've been working with GWS now for 5 years, try and get them a brand in Western Sydney, because a lot of people know who Dipper is. So when I go and promote the game, they go, "Oh yeah, Dipper," So it's been very interesting. But they're growing. They're three preliminary finals.
Of course, yeah.
3 preliminary finals in the last 5 years. About 20,000 members now. So we're doing a good job.
Okay. So, Dipper, thanks so much. It's been really a pleasure to actually hear your story. I've got one question though, okay, before we finish. Is this moustache of yours your trademark?
Without this moustache, I make no money. This is my trademark. I grew it one day, and it's made me millions.
Wow. Why not?
You should try one.
I'll have to ask Robin.
You should see my mother's moustache. It's bigger than mine.
Many thanks, Dipper. I really appreciate your time for being here and being part of our Around the Grounds story.
Can I say something to you to tell the people?
Yeah, sure.
I'm very honoured being here and really just understand a lot more now that the game is available for everybody. Even though you can't hear, but you can see, and you love the game just as much as us. So I just want to say thank you so much for supporting us, and we really hope that your football team gets well. Go the Hawks. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Really grateful for your time that you've given us with the interview.
Pleasure.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
How do you say go the Hawks?
Well, for Hawthorn, you'd probably spell H-A-W. Saints, this is a sign for St
Right,
Kilda,
Saint.
okay?
Right.
But for Hawthorn, so for your Collingwood, no, you do the Magpie. You sort of got to spell a lot.
Oh, you spell.
Yeah. But Cats, the sign for Cats, so Geelong supporters, they would go Cats.
Doggies?
Oh, dogs. This is a sign for dogs. Oh, that's a sign for Footscray. That's the old sign for Footscray.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's the sign, exactly.
Essendon?
The Bombers.
The Bombers?
Yeah, like a plane, yeah.
That's cool.
The Swans. So that's the sign for a swan. So swans, you know, got the long
Yeah.
leg. Yeah.
Eagles? Eagles?
That's the sign for lions.
Lions?
That's Eagles. Yeah. That's Eagles. That's the sign for an eagle. Adelaide. Oh, your fingers spell crows. Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. This is a sign for Melbourne. So Melbourne, and you can sign for Melbourne Demons. Yeah.
Yeah, Demons. Yeah.